Smash.
Since so much of the show is about the making of a star, and given like how big, the whole idol experience and everything was for you as well, made you a star. Do you think it's something that can be taught, or that you can kind of coach yourself to stardom, or is it something that's like, you either have it or you don't?
Well, first of all, I really think our show is not so much about the making of a star. I mean, it is, but it's really about the making of a Broadway show, and kind of everything that goes into what it's a show and what it takes, and obviously the star is the one that always gets the attention because you don't see as much behind the scenes. But what's interesting about our show, and I think people are intrigued about what happens behind the scenes, what the writers go through and what the director goes through and what the actors go through behind the scenes. So, but that's a really hard question. I mean, I tend to believe that, it's interesting, our promos say stars aren't born, they're made. But I've always truly believed that you're kind of born to do things, and I've always had a really strong drive with what I've wanted to do in my life, and it hasn't always been the easiest. My career hasn't always been this. It's been this and this and this, and it's been an interesting ride, and so to say that a star is made, I think it's made in that when a person has a lot of drive, and given the right opportunities and the right team and ultimately the right talent, I think that then they're made in that way. But in terms of being people, I've always been a strong believer of people finding what they're kind of born to do and what they're called to do, and so I guess you can interpret that in whatever way you like.
Did you dare to dream this big as a child?
Oh yeah, I think in the way I'm most similar as my character is just the dream aspect. I've always been a big dreamer, and have, like a lot of people pursuing their dreams, have had a lot of heartache and disappointments and going in for parts and not getting them, and but I don't know where the perseverance kind of comes from. I think it's just, again, it's just sort of in you. You have no other choice, and I was a big dreamer as a kid. Yeah, I used to sit in front of the mirror and practice crying scenes in front of the mirror and silly things like that, and yeah, I always dreamed things. I think you have to be a big dreamer to have something.
Do auditions scare you?
It's one thing to go on Idol and perform. It's another thing when you do movies. Mm-hmm. But it's another thing when you're kind of a star and part of the ensemble of Smash. It's a hard job. I mean, it's a lot of hours. Right. Is this weird? How do you compare this to any of the other projects you've been on, work-wise?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously I've never been on a television show before, so, well, I technically have been, but, no, in terms of a real, sitcom, I'm sorry, what's it called, I'm looking for this.
Series? Episodic.
Yeah, episodic show, thank you. I've never been involved with something like that, so I think the difference is, and I have done a few, an independent film and then a shark movie, that there's a beginning and an end, and so that you kind of know that the rest is coming. So I guess this show is, the thing about episodic is that it is just sort of non-stop. It just keeps going and going and going, and so you really have to pace yourself, and that I'd say it's probably the hardest
Katharine?
thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's it.
So how did you?
I was just going to ask though, to follow up on Mary's question and to draw it back to what you're working on. Mm-hmm. You did go through a transformation where they were working with you, and I'm wondering how much of that are we going to see in terms of the show now, and how did you deal with being kind of changed?
Yeah. Well, I'm not quite. Yeah, I think you definitely will see my character go through some transformations in terms of how she. I don't know. I always, when I was approaching the character, I was very specific about how I wanted her to dress, and the pilot is never like the clothing and your hair, it's never like the perfect way you want it to be because it's all done so fast. So when you get into the episodes, you kind of can settle more in. But I was always clear that it wasn't like she's this like, hobo from nowhere, like who doesn't know how to dress, and she knows how to play the part. And I think that's what's interesting about her character is that she's not the girl who dresses up as Marilyn to show up for the audition. She's like the cool chick. She's like, no, I don't need to I don't need to dress up to show you that I can play the part. But then she also finds out that there are some things that you have to do and go through that you may not want to, and you kind of have to find out, is that in your moral, your moral code of whether you want to do that or not.
Do you know where this goes? Do you know if there's a continuation of the story after your story after this season? I mean, certainly we can't be doing the Maryland show for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
So, have they told you?
Well, I certainly do not know what happens at the end of the season. I still don't. We're not even there yet. But I do. There has been conversation that we will get to a big out-of-town trial, which is much like how it works in real life. We'll get to an out-of-town trial, which is a big thing in the world of Broadway, and the second season would potentially be going to Broadway and being on Broadway. So, but in terms of like a third season, I have no idea whether I would imagine we would move on to a different show. I don't know.
Has anybody actually suggested that you play Norma Jean and Megan play Marilyn, and this would just solve the whole problem?
It might be suggested. I can't reveal that, but that's actually a good thought, right?
Okay.
What is your audition process like, and what was it like for you to meet Spielberg?
The audition process was one of the easier ones out of everything that I've auditioned for, and I'd say my young career in terms of television and film, it's been the easiest. I was testing for another pilot a year ago this time, and every pilot you audition for, you're like, I hope I get this, because you just like, you don't know what's coming down the pipeline. You want to get whatever job you can get, because pilot season to me is kind of like a crapshoot. But then I found out that there was this show, and I was like, well, I hope I don't get it, because I hope I just get an audition. I went in on a Friday to put myself on tape for casting, and then a phone call that afternoon from Stevens, Leslie Feldman, head of casting, and the next week I was on an airplane to New York testing for the show, and waited till the following Sunday because Bob Greenblatt and Steven Spielberg had to watch the tape, and I was like, I am cool with giving them time to watch my tape. Like, I think I'm okay with Steven Spielberg watching my tape. And then that was it. I had the part, so it was a fairly easy process. And Steven Spielberg, I met actually coming right off of Idol, because he wanted to meet me, and so I think there was a direct connection between this show and the meeting, and knowing that he has had this idea for the show for 5 to 6 years now. So I know that this has been in the pipeline.
Just to follow
So
with
do you
that,
think
what do you
American
hope?
Idol
What do
really-
you hope young and upcoming stars or future stars get from watching you, since you came up that way?
I don't know. I don't even. I don't think people will. I think people will just hopefully just watch the character, not as me, but as a fresh, just as a symbol of what all girls go through in terms of trying to make it in this business.
A lot of people from American Idol have gone on to do Broadway. Is that one of your hopes also?
Over the last 5 years, I've had lots of opportunities to go on Broadway, and it just really wasn't. I love theater. Obviously, I'm getting the best of both worlds but my goal was really television, was really film, and then it turned into television. So I eventually will, I imagine, go on Broadway because I would love to do that. But I don't know if it would be a musical. It might be a play or something different. It's not an immediate goal of mine right now.
When
Is this
people meet
filming
you,
in New York,
do
or
they
where?
have a
Tell me about, is it filmed in New York?
Yes, it's filmed in New York.
when people meet you, do they have a preconceived notion of who you are and what you're about? And how do you dispel those preconceptions?
I don't really know what people think of me. I don't.
Well, it's that idol girl, you know.
Right,
I mean,
of course, yes, of course, and that is. I guess that's always been that's always the challenge when you come off of a show like that, and especially, I mean, that was when I came off the show, I didn't want to be like oh, I want to be an actress. I didn't go to the press and say, well, now I want to be an actress because of course you do. You know, that's so obvious and that's so stereotypical. And so I kind of kept it as a I just wanted it to be something that I did and that I pursued, and that if I could find success in it, then that would be great, and let it speak for itself. And I'm sure, yeah, you know, it's there's nothing wrong with of knowing where you came from and where you got a stepping stone, and that's really for me what it was. And for some people, it's a massive launching pad, and for me, it's been a slow build, and I'm very appreciative of it, and hopefully people will just see me as will hopefully just watch the show. That's what I really hope.
But Katharine, you did take some amazing criticism on that show. You know, I think on Idol you did. You're beautiful, and you've got a great figure, and people were criticizing you for weight that didn't exist. I mean,
You know what? I don't. To be honest, when we're on that show, we really don't know what people. We stay pretty oblivious, and that's how I'd like to stay. I don't. It means nothing. It's something that's printed. Today is in someone's trash tomorrow, and it really doesn't mean anything.
You haven't really talked about the character. Please talk about the character.
Oh, Karen Cartwright. Well, there's obviously a lot of similarities between me and her. I did talk about how we have. In terms of our dreams and aspirations, I feel like I connect with her in that way. But I would say the character she's a big dreamer, she has a big heart. She probably is unrealistic in that she is, in the real world, she's just so trusting and so kind. Like, I mean, I think of myself as I try and treat people as nicely as I can and as a nice person, but the graciousness that this character has, and the forgiveness, and the patience she just really has. Doesn't mean she doesn't have a drive. It doesn't mean she's a good competitor, but she's just like the nicest person in the whole world. It's just I hope that people find her very likable. Obviously, that's my goal, that people find her likable. But just a good person, and I really admire that about this character, and sort of her innocence and purity and her moral code that she is trying to keep.
Well, I'm afraid our time.
Thanks,
All right,
Catherine.
thank you.
Kathy, do you mind?